Just because we're people of faith doesn't mean we have to pretend. Sometimes life is exactly like fishing all night and catching nothing. And when I say fishing all night and catching nothing, I don't mean taking a charter out of Edgartown and running out to Cape Pogue and around to Wasquee and around the other side to Lobsterville and then off of Vineyard Haven and back to port and you didn't catch anything. I mean what Peter and James and John were up to. Commercial fishing, meaning that it was their livelihood. And if they didn't catch anything, they didn't have anything to live on. A dirty and a dangerous job with hours and hours and hours of hard labor where they were just scraping by. And they scraped by just to be able to go home, repair their nets, bail out their boats, take a nap, and go out the next night. So how does that mean in our lives? What am I saying when I say fishing all night and catching nothing? Well, it's sort of like having absolutely too much on your plate with your work and your family and your children and your civic responsibilities and everything else, so that your life feels like it's sand just running through your fingers and you just can't grip it. Or it's like a blur as you're skating across the surface of life and you're wondering, what does this all mean? Or you find yourself anxious all the time, wondering, what am I forgetting to do? What am I missing out on? What am I not noticing? How did my kid get to be 14? How fast it's all going. Look in the mirror. Oh my God. I'm not 25 anymore. And if that goes on long enough, you can get up some mornings and think, I'm just going to take a day off. This is too much. I need to get recentered. Or how about in life, if you're surrounded by negativity? You have someone in your family and it's always dark. Or you come to work and your team is just, we can't do this, we shouldn't do that, we never did that before. Or the community or the church is all about what we can't do as opposed to what we could do. What we can't imagine doing as imagining what God would like us to do. And your days feel like you're walking in quicksand or up to your waist in a running tide. Or you turn on the news and you know what's going on in the world. You know the things that are out there, maybe not for us, but for our kids, like global warming, or how we just can't seem to get race fixed in our country, or gun violence fixed in our country, or all the other things, and we listen to the voices talk about everything that seems to be beside the point. Until you get up one morning and you wonder, is it even worth it trying to move the dial? Bother trying. Is it just better to keep my head down, putting one foot in front of the other, hoping for the best and going with the flow? That's like fishing all night and catching nothing. Or how about you love someone and you're caring for them and they have a chronic illness and they're not going to get better. That's what a chronic means. Everything isn't going to be as good as it used to be, or as it could be, or as it ought to be. And you just find yourself feeling sad all the time for this other person because you know what it could be like to be healthy. And you find yourself getting tired every day as you care for this person. Or maybe you're the one with the chronic health problem and it's not going to get better. And then you get up every morning and it feels like you're rowing a boat into a stiff wind. It's just hard to even do the things you used to do. That's like fishing all night and catching nothing. Or maybe you're grieving the death of a loved one. And there's a hole. Most of us here have been there or are there. And it's just gray. And it's hard to be happy. And it's always compared to what used to be. That's really like rowing out and fishing all night and not catching anything. So I'd like to tell you some good news if you're in any of these boats. There really is only one thing you can do if your life feels like you've been fishing all night and catching nothing. And I know it's not what you expected, but Jesus says to Peter, go out a little deeper and put the net over the other side. And by that, I believe he means go fishing for your soul, for the divine in your life. Because Peter doesn't realize who Jesus is at this point. And I know that you think, he's telling us you got to come to church more. If you come to church more, everything's going to be better. Or you have to have more faith. That's a sermon you hear in a lot of churches. And people are like, I don't even know what I think. Or pray harder. To which I would say, if that's what you think the sermon is, then you've come to the wrong church. Because what I actually think the best thing to do when life is hard is to do what Jesus did. Too often when you hear about Christians, they talk about all the things that we shouldn't do. Right? Like we shouldn't be sexual creatures, we shouldn't drink, we shouldn't dance, we shouldn't gamble. But when you read the Bible, Jesus did a number of things repeatedly to help his friends connect with God and understand what it was all about. And it's not at all what people think. They went boating. Right? How many stories on the water? And they went fishing. And Jesus said, don't worry about what you catch. We're just out here. Most of the stories are about walking around in the countryside. Having dinner parties and picnics with friends. What's the feeding of the 5,000 but a picnic by the lake? Spending lots of time with your friends. 3 years, Jesus just hung out with these guys walking around. Meeting people who are different from you. How many stories does Jesus meet someone who's very different from him? And rather than focusing on the difference, Jesus connects with the common humanity. Doing that can make the whole difference in your life. Poke authority in the eye if you see injustice. Don't just put up with it or feel disappointed or sad. And the last thing that Jesus did a lot with his friends was really opening, if it were us, opening our hearts and minds, our eyes and ears to what God is doing that is beyond our present ability to imagine. The parables, like the fishing story that we just read, is beyond our imagination. Sure, I've been out in a boat where the stripers are literally jumping into the boat. But that's no miracle. That's luck. I showed up at the right place at the right time. But to imagine that God can do so much more than we can even begin to imagine, and then to apply it to our lives and look at where there is something that feels lacking in love. And yes, of course, I am your pastor, so I would say developing a prayer life and a meditation life and coming to church can't hurt. To which, if you're at all like the confirmation class, you're thinking, that can't be right. That's way too simple. There needs to be something much more complex than that. Which is exactly what Peter said when he saw what was happening. Go away from me, Lord. This can't be true. But my friends, if you know what it feels like to have your soul restored, if you've been in that dark place and are now on the other side. If you know what living resurrection feels like you feel like you've been dead and now you are raised. If you know what salvation feels like there was no way you were going to be able to stop living this bad way, and then you're on the other side. When you stopped this and tried that and the difference it made, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, then this sermon is a sermon of encouragement. Now is the time to try. Do one of the things that Jesus did. And keep doing it until you connect with God. And then the final message. All of us have neighbors. And what's the one thing that our neighbors say? Well, for our age group, right? Kids. They'll say, I'm crazy busy. I can't stop to talk. I'm running to nowhere. Just running. I'll see you in July. No, you won't, because I'm going to the Cape. Right? You've heard all the metaphors. That might be just the person that you need to tell. You need to step off. You need to take a break. You need to try doing some of these things. And it doesn't sound so crazy when you say, my God says go for a walk in the countryside. Or my God says come on over to my house for a dinner party. Or my God says let's go for a boat trip on the Charles River. That's fishing for people. Amen.